The interview today will be with the creator of Dice Tower. Let's give the floor to him.
I'm Josh Anthony, and I'm one of the owners of Lunacy Entertainment based out of Minnesota, and we're currently making a game called Dice Tower.
How would you describe Dice Tower?
What we describe the game as, it's a 2D roguelike strategy platformer. So the goal of it is you're supposed to collect dice and then roll them to determine how much time you get in order to complete what we're calling challenge floors. So as you go through the challenge areas, you then find more dice to collect, navigate different hazards, and essentially you get to the exit, and then you repeat this process ascending all the way to the top of the tower. And that's kind of the core loop. We've been doing Dice Tower kind of on the side of our day jobs for 2.5 years, and then I've been doing full-time development on Dice Tower for the last 6 months. Previously, before doing that, I worked various web development jobs, so I have an engineering-ish background, but through the course of game development, I've also gotten a lot of production experience, design experience. One of the things about being an indie is you really do wear a lot of hats, and it gets you a lot of experiences.
Yeah, you really do wear all the hats. I'm kind of like, oh, my art hat is really bad. and I'm just kind of like, I do all this programming, like, oh yeah, now I just need the art, and I think about making the art and go, Just a quick interruption. As always, if you like what you hear, like and subscribe. And if you like the sound of Dice Tower, there's a link to his Steam page and his website in the doobly-doo. Now back to the video.
Asking people to do the art precisely for that reason. We could do it, but the artists just do a way better job, frankly.
Agreed. I always think that because we have some artists that work with us, but we don't have any money and we don't really pay anybody, including myself. And so it's just like, they get done what they get done. And it's just like whenever they finish something that I've already done, it's just like, wow, why did I even do that? You said you work with another person. How long have you been doing that? How are they?
So
how did that start?
So that started last year, probably around May-ish, if I'm remembering correctly. So it's been over a year now since we started working with some artists. We worked with a concept artist who also does the high-res art that the game uses, and then we also work with a pixel artist, and then we pay them what we can afford in order to make sure that they're earning their fair share. And then in the process, that means it's a little bit slower because obviously they've got other things to be doing, but the results pay dividends. We also recently started doing the same for sound and music design, which I previously was handling, but I realized that I'm only mediocre at it, and the effort it would take for me to get good would take too much time away from all the other things that I am doing, so it was more efficient to just bring someone else in to help with that.
Oh, wow. You got a whole little team going, because I thought it was just you for some reason. Was it just you in the beginning, or did I just have no idea?
So in the beginning, it was me and the other owner of Lunacy. They were originally the ones that were trying to pick up the art and learn it, and then I was handling the engineering, lead design, and basically most of the hats. So I've been doing the vast majority of the development. That would be fair to say.
All right, yeah, that sounds about right. I'm kind of the same way. I have the most time to do things because I am unemployed as well, and I end up doing most of the coding. Now, this is kind of a weird, funny question, but where does your name come from? I know you introduced yourself as your real name, but your avatar's name is SaintKerrigan. Does it come from StarCraft, or is it something else?
Yes, it does come from StarCraft. So this was way back in my teens, which that was about 20 years ago to give myself a date. So I was going through the gamut of, I just want to come up with really quirky user names for the games that I'm playing, and then I thought up SaintKerrigan one day, and I'm like, that's funny because the Kerrigan in StarCraft is anything but a saint, so this is kind of an ironic name, and I liked it, so I went with it. And then in my kind of late teens, early 20s, when I realized that I should stop coming up with so many different usernames, that's the one that I kind of settled on.
Yeah, I have a similar boat, because my nickname is Superbird29, so the bird comes from my last name, which we can ignore for now. but it came from RuneScape. It was like the auto-generated, like I tried to like pick a name and it's like this, but 29 is open, and I just have stuck with it ever since, and that was like 15 years ago. A long time.
Yep. Funny how these things just kind of stick with you over the years.
Yeah, I think almost everybody I know has like a nickname or a username or whatever that they've had for like more than a decade.
Yeah, it's just part of the internet culture.
Agreed. So Dice Tower is a game that combines time trials, dice, and platforming. How did you arrive at that combination of mechanics in one game?
So it started as a game jam game, actually. So I'm sure as a indie dev, you're probably familiar with Game Maker's Toolkit, the YouTube channel. And then they host a game jam every year of some renown, and in 22 we decided to join it, and the theme that year was Roll of the Dice. And at the time we had just come off of doing another platformer game as kind of our first attempt to publish a game. It was actually itself a reversion of a game jam game, but to that end we were going to do a platformer because that's kind of what we were familiar with. And then once the dice came around, we were trying to find ways to kind of shy away from like pure randomness, because that's kind of what you think when you think of dice in games. We wanted to give the player control over the randomness, and that's how we wound up with being able to collect and roll dice. The number of dice you choose to roll is essentially you're playing with dice probability. So that's how it started, just doing a game jam, and then enough people responded positively to it that we decided, okay, that we'll go ahead and try to make a full commercial effort out of this. Now, at the time, we thought, oh, we'll get this done in like a year, and 3 years later, we're still working on it. So that reflects a lot of learnings that were done along the way, to be sure.
I did the same thing for my game. It's just like, in my mind, we were just making a simple puzzle game. We just have to make the cat move around a tiled grid. Should be super easy. Absolutely not. The behind the scenes math is not complicated mathematically, but there's like so many edge cases we have to account for that are really annoying to kind of slip into the right place. And it's just like,
oh yeah,
I thought the game would take us like half a year. It took us 2.
Yep.
All right. So I know you're using the Godot game engine. Did you initially make the game in Game Maker then? Or does Game Maker's Toolkit allow any?
So Game Maker's Toolkit actually has no association with the Game Maker engine, so that had nothing to do with it. But
am I confused about a different channel then? Oh. You know what? Continue.
Anyway, the reason we chose Godot is, well, it started back in 2018 when we were just starting to get into like game development and figuring this out. And at the time I was doing Linux main, and Godot was the only engine at that time that had first class support for Linux developers. So that kind of shoehorned me in that direction. And then as I worked with it, I just fell in love with the way it architects things, the way it asks you to do things. It just dovetails very well with my engineering sensibilities. So then I'm back on Windows as a Windows dev now, but I've stuck with Godot just because it's great to work in.
Honestly, I've only heard good things about Godot. I've like never heard any complaints that seem anything more than just like whinging about something.
Yeah.
But I've still never actually done it. My one of my partners, Dan, he's currently making a game in Godot that we've titled it? Like Carnival Gambling Simulator or something. It's not really a game. All there exists is you can like push people into like gambling buildings and then they go gamble like with a bat or something. I don't know. It's weird. It's his baby, not mine. So you
sounds like an interesting premise.
Right? I just kind of I heard that. I'm like, that sounds like that could like just get people in the door, because it just is a crazy shenanigan. It's just a crazy concept. Like I remember that. Did you play that Digging the Hole game that came out a couple months ago?
No, I have not, but I've seen a lot about it for sure.
Dude, I bought it. It's like $5. I'm like, wow, I got like 10 hours of fun just digging a stupid hole. I was like, why is this entertaining? There's like, I started like thinking about it like, oh, what does this game actually do? Okay, so we have deformable ground, we have like lootables, and then you can like run and sell the lootables. But I'm like, there's nothing about this game that is at all complicated, like, or robust. And they said like, oh yeah, we made it in like 3 months. And I was like, that's crazy. And then have you been playing Peak too?
Now that just came on my radar.
Okay. That game is like the same thing, although I think it's more robust. Peak seems a lot harder to make, especially with their like mountain generation. But like they were trying to make a quick game in between their big games, which I think is actually a very good idea if you ever like make it as an indie dev, whatever. You have like a big project and some small projects so you don't burn out. I don't know, the indie scene just seems to be doing, putting out good games. So
Yeah.
you were forced into Godot because you were working on Linux for more or less. And has Unity ever had any Linux support?
I think they all have Linux support now. I haven't like dug into it and checked, but I think at this point it's no longer a barrier.
Right. Maybe that was Valve's doing because they have. But that's kind of like funny because Panda, the creator of Dungeons and Ducklings, he got into Game Maker because he just had. He had already purchased the Game Maker thing through Humble Bundle, and so that's just what he used. Like no more thought to it went into it than that, which I think is just kind of like it's just kind of roll of the dice what you end up using and liking. Like
Yeah, and I think
you first.
I think it really speaks to like at the end of the day, all of the engines have their different strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't really matter which one you use as long as you just pick something and go with it. That's kind of a maxim I found throughout my entire career. Don't worry about having the right tools, just start with what you have and then you'll figure out what you actually need.
Right. And even if you do end up like switching engines later or making some massive change, you'll have learned a bunch of stuff. Like for example, like cuz I went to school for computer science and game design, so I was we didn't do anything with Godot. We actually did something with like a photon engine instead one time or something. I'm not even sure I also had to use Pygame one of the classes. I did not like that. but I also oh my god, Unreal drove me up a wall. Like I've always like invested a lot of money into my computer relative to most of the other things in my life, but every time I had to compile the code in C sharp or not C sharp in Unreal to run it, which is just every time you make any change, it took forever. I literally alt tab and and then I had other issues which I couldn't really fix, but I passed the class with decent grades, but it just like it put such a sour taste in my mouth just how long it took compared to Unity and just all that. I was like, oh my god, I hate Unreal.
Yeah, and Godot's compile time is pretty quick too.
I think
say
it's
compile time, it's
faster.
more. Yeah, it's pretty fast.
It's the fastest, I think. I remember them flexing over Unity, and I was like, and Unity just gets as your project balloons in size, it does start to approach Unreal's compile time, but it happens.
Yeah, the more stuff you add, the more time it takes to compile it. That's just nature.
Have you run into anything like that? You're like that Godot. Do you have any like things that you think are like disadvantages of Godot, or things that have bothered you? I always like to see what bothers people about their client of choice.
So I would say on the whole, like the times that I've not been happy about Godot, it's mostly due to some of the complexities of the code that I'm trying to write running into the structure of Godot and how it actually does things. I said earlier that I do like it. There are a few cases where I just, it's not a choice that I would have made. For example, one of the things that drives me up a wall constantly is their use of ternaries and how they phrase it. So a ternary in a programming language is a form of writing an if statement in a single line. So in most languages that I've worked with, you start by defining the condition and then you write, okay, condition true, do this, condition false, do that, and you do it in that order.
Okay.
Godot does it in a completely different way. You start with the truthy condition, if, condition, else, the falsy, which it just rankles with my semantic sensibilities because it makes way more sense in my brain to start by defining the thing you're evaluating and then list the outcomes. That's a very just nitpicky semantic thing that most of the time I just write it, I'm annoyed with it for a few seconds, and I move on. But there's a few other things that I've run into as well. One of the things that I ran into a lot with Godot 3 actually was resource caching.
Are we
So
on
Godot
4
has
now?
we're currently migrating to Godot 4. That's
Oh,
a
okay.
story in and of itself.
Mm.
But anyway, the resource system is really flexible in Godot, but it's also incredibly easy to step on a landmine with it, with how it works, because it's a resource that, and by resource I mean literally anything from an image to a dictionary to
So just RAM
uh,
location, just kind of.
basically. And then by nature, the way resources seem to want to work is you create them and then they're used by reference throughout the rest of the program.
Okay.
Inexperienced me didn't realize that, so I started using resources in, I'm just going to do a resource for every single instance of this die that I have, and then I'm going to create multiple instances of these. And of course, you create multiple instances of these and you don't account for the fact that, this is all referring to the same centralized thing instead of being a unique instance of that thing. So then that caused all sorts of data overwriting issues because I was trying to do things that were not compatible with the way the engine wanted me to do it. Now,
do you know if to interrupt you for just a brief, do you know if Godot's underlying is C# or C++? Because I have run into that exact same issue on Unity. If
it's C++ under the hood.
Okay.
And C.
Because I did the same thing, so I was trying to create a copy of a level and then save it so I could revert to the copy, but I had to do it in a really convoluted way. I had to break it all into component parts and then reassemble the copy. Otherwise, you need to be like, what do you mean? I changed it. So the copy changed. I had to go to one of my college teachers and ask him what is going on. I don't know why this is changing. Because I didn't even know how to Google it because I didn't know what was happening. But
to finish the story, though, I did finally learn how to properly work with instancing different copies of resources properly. But by that point, I had built an architecture on top of my hacky workarounds, which then made it really hard to deal with cleaning that up without breaking a ton of other things in the process, which that was kind of an eye-opening moment for me in realizing, because I'm by nature someone that likes designing systems and doing clean systems. If you build a system with incomplete knowledge, that's kind of a bad thing. So you want to be careful about how deep you try to systemize things and try to contain it to what it is you actually need, and then wait until you find the pain points in what you're doing before you go and change it.
That's good advice.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I'm doing with the Godot 4 migration. I'm also taking that chance to fix some of those mistakes that past Josh made and do things a little more cleanly and sanely.
Your worst enemy is always your past self while programming.
Oh
yeah. Why did I do this? Who did this? Oh wait.
Code comments. That's
the
only reason I know how I do things.
I always do it because I don't trust myself to remember, or it just saves so much time. If it takes me 10 seconds to read a comment beat and then I remember what I was doing instead of 30 seconds reading the code to try to put it together, it's just, I think in English, not in if statements.
Yeah, I tend to approach it with a more language-oriented mentality to the kind of system I've settled on is I'll add comments around kind of like an outline form. So the outline describes what's happening with this code, and then I group all of the code related to whatever that particular part of the outline is. So then that helps with getting too verbose.
That's more robust than I had for comments. Sometimes I just have like it'll be a couple sentences, but I feel like if
Yeah.
I walked away from code long enough, I don't think those sentences would be enough. It does sometimes take me a little bit to get reacquainted with everything, even when I wrote almost all of it.
Oh yeah, and especially if you've got all kinds of complex intertwining systems, then you have to crawl through all of that and understand how everything connects together. Yeah, it always takes a while to relearn what you did.
So you said you're migrating to Godot 4, and that's been a whole thing. Why don't you go through some of that? I'm just kind of curious because I've done some migrating, but it has never been too painful.
All right, so I'll start by saying the common wisdom in game dev is once you're on a game engine, you don't upgrade major versions because it causes a lot of pain and difficulty precisely because you're changing a whole bunch of paradigms under the hood. And no matter what kind of conversion software the provider writes, it's never going to fully catch everything in a mature, complex game. So for that reason, I held off on doing it for a really long time. The reasons I finally decided to do it was because the stuff that we were planning to integrate with on a third-party side, some of the plugins, those were no longer being actively supported on 3, and we were trying to integrate Fmod so that our sound person could work with Fmod and not have to go directly into the code base. And the Godot 3 version of the Fmod plugin we wanted to use, it was flat out broken. It was not working, and people that maintain it told us, yeah, we don't support it, which, they're doing it in their free time. Obviously, the Godot 4 version is what they're going to give their priority to, since that's where most people are nowadays anyway. We were one of the few people still on 3, so
when did 4 come out? Like how long ago is this?
So 4 came out in March of 24, I think, if I'm remembering that correctly. So, it's been a year and a half now, and we made the decision 2 months ago to start the migrations. But running into that and then realizing, okay, we have other plugins we were planning to integrate at some point, we're most likely also going to run into this problem. And because of the way Godot's plugin system works in 3, all of that is done in C and C++, which I don't have any experience in. So I'm not going to be able to fix the things that are broken. And even if I did have that knowledge, that would take away from the time spent actually developing my stuff, the game, instead of maintaining someone else's plugins and systems. On top of that, I mentioned earlier, I'm using the migration as an excuse to kind of clean up some of my engineering sins. One of the big ones is the rendering system that I'm using. So Godot has its own way of rendering things, rendering settings, and I chose to go away from that because Dice Tower uses a Celeste style presentation where there's a mixture of high-res art and pixel art. So I needed a way to represent both of those things because it requires different rendering setups. So the way that I initially set it up was not great. I'll just put it that way. It relied on hard coding, detecting window sizes, what the size of the screen was, which then meant having to add support manually for every possible screen size, which that's impossible to do. And since that rendering system is underlying all of the game, that meant changing it was a pain. And honestly, I don't even think it would have been possible because the way I'm solving that particular problem in Godot 4, I think only works in Godot 4. But anyway, I needed to clean that up, and I wanted to leverage what Godot 4 offers in order to solve the dynamic scaling issues, which I think I've got a solution in place now. We're still robustly figuring out the kind of nuances behind it, but I think now I'm able to dynamically scale to any size that I want, and I don't have to add any custom resolution-based conditions.
Nice.
But yeah, so those were the reasons. At some point, I knew we were going to have to switch to Godot 4, so then it's a question of, well, if we're gonna have to do it, then it's better to just bite the bullet and get it over with.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, don't change your game engine version unless you are forced into it.
Yeah, I was forced into it because our game's on the Google Play Store, and Google's like, yeah, you're not using the right version of this, and that, and if you don't do something about it, we'll prevent you from updating your game again. I'm like, oh, okay.
That's fun.
So I put it off for 2 months, of course, and then I upgrade, and it won't build anymore. And I
Mhm.
had to go down a whole rabbit hole to figure out why it wouldn't build, including contacting support, which I don't like to do. Because first of all, I'm not paying for Unity, so like at some point, I'm sure they're not going to help me. And on the other hand, it should be able to.
Mm.
People are talking on the forums all the time. It should be you. I should be able to figure it out. It took so long, and I ultimately came to the conclusion they had broke this version, and I needed to upgrade to one more version.
Oh, fun.
And they weren't gonna fix it for months past the deadline. I was like, holy crap.
Mhm.
But it happens. So
Yeah.
are you gonna use I know you're not done with this game, but are you gonna stick with Godot? Are you a Godot fanboy? Let's call it that.
Yeah, I'm a Godot fan, and if I've got any say over it, I'll use it for any games that I work on for the foreseeable future. One of the other advantages of using Godot is it's open source, and they intentionally take steps to keep major corporations and people with money from screwing around with it, which as a Unity user, you can probably imagine why that would be incredibly valuable.
No, what do you mean? I don't hate the company that makes the tool I know the best. Like, they fired the guy and a bunch of his lackeys, which was like, okay, that's good. And then like, but they're still making bad, stupid moves, and they're not broke, but they're not broke. It's like
Mm.
they still need money from like venture capitalists or whatever. They still need to be able to raise money, which I just like. And there's the whole catch 22. I believe they make more money from ads than they do from games, which
Yeah, that
is
wouldn't surprise me.
I think it's a bad finger on the lever of their decision making.
Yeah.
you know. But yeah, that's
Yep.
something I'm definitely gonna be learning Godot, and even if Unity stays my best skill, I need to know Godot just in case because if Unity followed through with what they were gonna do, I think I was just gonna be forced off of Unity.
Yeah.
Because like, oh, you have a successful game, you owe us all your money, which is crazy.
Well, and it's interesting now, like how much Godot it's become mainstream since all of that started happening. Like we've gotten to the point now where freaking Battlefield 6
I saw
is
that. That's
using
crazy.
Godot for their like custom editor for making Battlefield 6 maps. Like that's just insane, and that's some great publicity. And that's on top of like all the really awesome games that are coming out that are built in Godot. Dome Keeper,
Oh, I love that
Brotato,
game. Yeah.
Cassette Beast, like
Brotatoes in Godot?
Brotato's
Oh.
in Godot, yeah.
You see, when you can't even tell what game a game engine is made in, the game engine has made it. I honestly think Unity doing that, like, literally cemented Godot. Because I know a couple of, like, big size indie devs, like, gave them a bunch of money and just invested in Godot's, like, future. Which is
Yeah,
like,
Slave Spire 2 is
yeah.
coming out on Godot.
Yeah. And didn't they drop like 100 grand on like Godot's, like, production? I know some big indie dev dropped like a bunch of change.
They might have.
I don't know if it was them, but I know a big size indie dev did do that, and it's just like wow, And I think I ended up donating like $5-10 or whatever, not anything significant, but
Yeah, I'm contributing at
it
this
all
point.
helps.
Yeah.
Just because like what is it? We want it to survive because it should make Unity a better platform too. At the end of the day, if they have something actually to fear, like oh, Godot could take
Yep.
all of our indie devs, and then we have like nothing left, or just some big other companies. Because I know Hearthstone I think is made in Unity, but I don't know if any other game that big is made in Unity. I'm sure there's something.
Yeah, I feel like there's definitely something.
All right, let's talk about your game a little bit more. We've been talking about other stuff too long. So your big milestone is migrating to Godot 4. That's kind of what I got, right?
That's a milestone. I would say our next big milestone is getting the game to a point where it could be released with a public demo, and I can just basically I don't have to stand around and explain all the faults away, which is one of the problems with the current demo of the game because of all of the engineering sins. I can't just hand it off to someone and let them use it on whatever screen because there's gonna be things that break the game.
Yeah, I actually had to. I think the first time I played your game, I had to downsize my screen to 1080p because you said like
Yep.
2K didn't work or whatever. Which I probably wouldn't have figured out. I just been like, oh hey, the screen's bad, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
And
Like,
I'm
y-
fairly technical, so I probably
yeah,
I probably would ask
it sh-
questions.
yeah, and it should never be the user's burden to understand how you're supposed to
Hmm.
set up the game in order for it to work properly. That's the developer's burden.
Right. I always kind of like when I was trying to get people to play my little puzzle game, I always was like, the younger the person, the less help they needed. So at some level, I knew my game explained its mechanics. But like older people, most of them, like 40% of them, could not get it just straight up. And I was like, this is my fault. How do I make it better? And I kept adding like more and more helpy bits without being like too overbearing. Like I hate the click this button and then click that button and all the other buttons don't work. But I don't even think I succeeded in the end. Like it's better than it ever has been for help. But what's like have you ever had like a very interesting like somebody says something and you're just like, oh, that's an insanely good idea, or like, has somebody ever like enlightened you to your game without knowing it?
I mean, there's probably like a ton of those. I'm just trying to think of specific examples. One that happened relatively recently, we were at SGDQ showing our demo to the speedrunner community. And like speedrunners were already part of like our target audience, but
Right.
one of the comments that I heard was, oh, this game, it really fits what speedrunners do in planning routes and executing them and adjusting on the fly. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's literally what speedrunning is.
And you can see
why
the
it
map ahead
resonates
of
so well.
time, too. Yeah, actually, I didn't even think about that for some reason. I'm not really a speedrunner, but like, the game seems, yeah. But also it's like approachable. Like I didn't feel like just because I didn't speedrun or wasn't super interested in that it was like not for me. That makes sense.
That's been one of the things we've been trying to do for the entirety of development is make a game that has that strategic complexity and that thrilling platforming, but also make it approachable, because when you're blending genres, if you go too far off the extremes of either genre, then you're going to alienate a lot of people. So you need to try and find the middle ground where you're still pulling in all of these genre conventions, but you're doing it in a way that is easy for people to work with. And I'll tell you, it's been a journey figuring a lot of this out.
I was kind of thinking like the balance of your game seems pretty crazy, because like it's a time trial where you choose how much time you're gonna get, and you can mortgage future runs to get more time. Or I don't even. I think that's like decent. How would you explain your game? I think we haven't actually done that, which I might cut this out and add this at the beginning.
Okay, so what we describe the game as, it's a 2D roguelike strategy platformer. So the goal of it is you're supposed to collect dice and then roll them to determine how much time you get in order to complete what we're calling challenge floors. So as you go through the challenge areas, you then find more dice to collect, navigate different hazards, and essentially you get to the exit, and then you repeat this process ascending all the way to the top of the tower. And that's kind of the core loop. And then what that resulted in is you've got elements where you have to plan what you're doing. You mentioned the map earlier. the map allows you to see what's coming up in the room, so then you can plan your route through it to maximize your chances of getting the resources. And then you roll for how much time you get, and then based on that roll, you have to adjust your plan. But then you go into the challenge area, which is platforming based, and then you have to execute that plan. So that's essentially what it boils down to. It's a plan and execute kind of game, which there's not that many games out there I can think of that really fit that bill. Like, I've done research trying to figure it out. The only two that really come to mind that I've played are Domekeeper and Thronefall. But it's a really cool it's a really cool kind of feel to try and hit.
Yeah, I don't. It does like I get how those games are related, and you're definitely in some good company. But like your game is very unique. I have never played anything quite like it because like I played Hollow Knight or Mario, tons of just standard platformers. But like a platformer that's also a time trial that you're the timekeeper in some fashion is a unique idea. I honestly, it's one of those things like game jams can produce games that I don't think would get made normally.
Yeah, I definitely wouldn't have thought of this if you asked me to sit down and come up with a game. Yeah, you're exactly right about game jams producing these kind of things.
Have you done a game jam since? Because I actually just recently did my first game jam, which should be like some sort of sin, but um, it was a fun little game. Our game we had a bigger group. We had a 5-person group, 4-person group. No, it was 5-person group. Sorry, and it was difficult to wrangle everybody. I did my best, and the game was all right. I stayed up till like 4 a.m. to make it work, which was not ideal. I was alone at that point, but it almost somebody included some like Unity what the heck is it? Editor scripts. And so I hit 4 a.m. and was like, oh my god, are we not gonna be able to build? Because there are some Unity editor scripts that are like insanely good. Like they could save you hours of programming if they worked in game, but they don't.
Mhm.
And I was able just to exclude them, and nothing broke. So I was like, oh, thank God. But the game was incomplete to say the least.
Yeah, I actually make builds on my game fairly regularly to make sure that they actually still work. And funny thing, that the reason that I
That's such a
learned
good
to do that
idea.
is because one of our the game that I mentioned earlier that we built to kind of get a feel for making games, the very first time we took it to a public playtesting event, the hours before, that was when I made the first actual build of the game, and it broke. And I did my best to fix it, but then it led to it. I got it compiling, but then during the playtest, it turns out, oh, the entire core mechanic of the game doesn't actually work.
Oh no.
And that it turned out it was because I used something that I assumed was just a version of a statement and assert, but it turns out the assert statements are solely meant for debugging, and they are stripped out of the code when they build.
Oh
So then putting game logic in
no.
an assert, yeah, entirely developer error. But I would have caught that earlier if I had built the game earlier. So that was the point where I said, okay, you know what? From now on, we're just building this game frequently enough that I can make sure that nothing blows up. I haven't had anything of that kind of significance happen since then, but it has helped a few times where I've built and suddenly things are not working. I've been able to at least catch that right away.
Yeah, I definitely have had some that really feels like a newbie error because I've done the same thing where it's like, oh, when I was newer, I was like, but it worked in the build. It worked on my
Mm,
machine.
yeah.
um and then that the same thing happened in our last game. Somebody who was unfamiliar with things didn't because you can do like if Unity editor do this, and then if it's not, it just won't run it, which is
Hmm.
pretty nice. Um,
Godot has that too.
oh yeah, I imagine everybody has that. But like, he could have put it in that, and then I would have never even known he used it or whatever. But I was like initially like it was 4 a.m, and I was staring at that air like, oh, kill me.
Mhm.
um,
Um, Back to the game jam thing, though. Yeah, I have actually done some game jams since that one, not as much, because I eventually realized that this was back during when I was doing this in my side project
Hmm.
time. I just didn't want to take away more Dice Tower development time. So then I was very sparingly choosing when to do game jams. The last one I did, though, was back in June, actually. I took part in the Godot engine specific jam. I wanted to try out an idea. There's actually more to it than that, but I'm saving kind of diving into that for a blog article at some point because I learned a lot about myself over the course of that game jam. It wound up developing two different games. One
Oh.
that I thought I was going to make, and then I realized it wasn't fun, so then I pivoted to a different game idea in the last weekend of it. It was a mess. It was a mess.
Right. I honestly think game jams are like supposed to be messes. Like that's the whole point. But I definitely like I agree with you. Like I learned something about myself and my abilities and like how I can lead a group and some other bits and
Mhm.
bobs and like also like okay, who can I trust and like what were you there for? Cuz if you were there to like make a game, all the people who were there for that followed through and like were super helpful. But if you're just kind of there to like chill out and chill, it was a little harder to get everything all sorted out.
Yeah.
So your next major, so to talk about milestones again, you're transferring to Godot 4, and then you're working on getting like the game into beta, if you will. I don't know if that's a fair assessment,
Well,
or you said a playable demo.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it beta. We're not that far along. Right now, I would say we're kind of in a pre-pro-ish stage. So what I mean by public demo, it's not so much like a beta. It's more get something that I could release to the public and they could play the game. It would not have all of the content. It would not have all of the mechanics, but it would be stable and there wouldn't be any glaring issues with the technical aspects of the game.
Yeah. All right. That seems like a sane goal.
Because once I have that, then it's also going to be a lot easier to pitch it to publishers. Like we could send the demo that we have right now, but that demo still has all of like the technical caveats, which I can't imagine is going to go over well if I send a publisher a demo and say, "Oh, by the way, don't run it in anything larger than 1920 by 1080."
Hey, the last time I ran it in 2K, it worked fine.
I mean, it works, but there's going to be all kinds of like random visual issues because of the aforementioned needing to hard code for every specific monitor size.
Right. That is like a funny thing, a funny hole that I definitely dug myself into similar holes where it's just like, oh, I need to hard code for checks notes, all of these numbers. And like the new ultra wide monitors, some of them have really weird resolutions.
Oh yes.
Like I think
Yeah.
my friend just got an ultra wide monitor and pitched his like double monitor setup, and his resolution is like 19. It's like what is it? It's like 2960 by like 1660. I'm like, what is that resolution?
Yeah, I was walking through Best Buy recently and just seeing some of the monitors on display. There's like a 49-inch curved ultra wide, and I can't imagine myself like using it and like doing stuff on it. It just breaks my mental concept.
I have not
But
vibed
people
with
use
the
it.
curved as well. I don't know.
Yeah, but people use it, so we gotta make software that supports it.
Right, and those people are generally vocal, so they are somewhat important to please.
Yeah.
Do you have like I think the answer is no to this, but do you have like a release window picked out or any or like you're hoping late 2026 or whatever?
So I don't have one that I'm wanting to share publicly because things are
allowed.
still overall in flux. We do have internal targets though, and that's something that I kind of had to learn. Okay, I can't just blizzard this and say it'll be ready when it's ready. There needs to at least be a goalpost to shoot towards, even if I'm gonna miss it because I don't know what I'm gonna run into along the way. I at least need to be trying towards something.
Yeah, I've actually been doing that for YouTube. My work ethic on my games have been abysmal recently, but I'm just like, okay, the school season starts in a couple of weeks for UW Stat where I went to school.
Yep.
And I want to
That's
get a
cool.
few YouTube videos done. One of them is this one. And then I want to reach out to one of my old teachers, and I want to see if like I can like make him any videos to like drum up any kind of like build up a rapport. We have somewhat of a rapport. I've used him as my contact to like go back to show my games off at the South Game Expo and some other bits and bobs. But you know, just trying to like build some inroads with people who like, you know, he has, I think he has like a doctorate in graphical engineering or something. He's qualified. And
Yeah.
you know, having a relationship with him, like he helped me with a bunch of things when I wasn't even in his class, or you know, at one of the smaller things he helped with, I wasn't even a student. You know, definitely want to, if I could help him out with anything, that's something I'm curious in. And also, you know, this is kind of an educational channel. I consider myself an educational channel first, and you know, having stuff a teacher actually like wanted and ordered, I think could help a lot with that. You know, build credibility and rapport and you know all that stuff.
Yeah.
Is there? Sorry.
I was just gonna add on to that. Like, honestly, networking really is such a big, important thing. It's something that I've had to get more comfortable with over the years. Just reaching out to people and like getting not just conversing with them, but being willing to ask people for help on things that I'm struggling with. But it just pays so much dividends, not just from the sense of it being the right thing to do, but it opens up so many possible doors down the road in the career. So yeah, definitely do things like what you were talking about, reaching out and offering to help make videos for people.
Yeah, like I guess if you're not comfortable answering this, just don't. But like, are you more introverted, more extroverted, somewhere in the middle? Because I know a lot.
I would,
You first.
yeah, I'll say I'm an extroverted introvert, so I can display extroversion. I'm outgoing and able to talk to people,
Mhm.
but I have an introvert's battery, so that does drain me.
I think I'm similar. I think I have a larger battery than a good chunk of people like that. But it's one of those things like it's like, oh well, I don't really want to talk with people.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything else you wanted to add? I think we've had I don't know. I've asked all the questions I wanted to ask. Is there anything you want to like include or talk about?
So one thing that I will talk about, which I think we started to get into and then moved away from, is just like the work ethic needed in order to kind of make this work. Because originally, like I said earlier, I started doing this in my spare time, and
Yeah.
I essentially got myself up to an average of 16 hours a week working on Dice Tower stuff, but that took a lot of
Yeah, that's a lot. Because you had like a job and a family. That's crazy.
Yeah, it took a lot to get there, but I developed a lot of kind of tricks and things that I learned in order to make sure to keep that kind of consistency going, because that's ultimately what it boiled down to. Is I need to keep consistently making progress on it, and then building on top of that consistency. It gets easier the more and more you keep applying yourself. So one of the things that really helped me with that is something that is I'm calling the no 0 days principle. It's something I actually first learned from a game dev YouTuber called David Whaley, but I'm sure this exists in many forms. But it's the idea that you never have a day that you're not making progress on something, even if it's just 5 minutes of progress. That's at the worst 5 minutes more progress than you would have made by not doing it. But a lot of times, just taking that initial 5 minutes is enough for me to get into the flow. So then suddenly it's an hour or two, and I've actually made a pretty decent chunk of progress. So,
all right.
If you're wanting to develop that consistency, I would start with that, because once you start doing something consistently, it's a lot easier to build better habits on top of it.
I used to be pretty consistent, and I still do stuff, but I just haven't been. I said I've been really bad at programming, but not so bad at YouTube and other bits and bobs. I show up to work with another person, so like we have every Monday night and every Thursday night. I show up and we show up and we work and chat like almost an office or whatever. And he makes progress on his goals and I make progress on my goals.
Nice.
But like I set like to your point, I've actually set myself a hard goal. We briefly talked about it, but it's just like I need to do all these things by this date or I'm a bad person. Just because otherwise I just think like goals just get things done. I just think it's how we work.
Yes.
It's certainly how I work.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of goals incorporation into my own, and even beyond like just the big, oh, I want to try and release the game by this date. I try to do smaller goals too throughout the day. Like, okay, it helps me. I'm going to work on this, this, and this. And because I know what those things are, it's a lot easier to then have those in mind as I'm going through, okay, why am I doing this? Oh, yeah, it's in service to this goal. It also helps avoid getting too far off on tangents, such as I'm going through some section of code and I go, oh, why did I write this other piece of code this way? I should just go deal with it. Nope, stay on task.
I actually think I'm kind of weird. I'm not a perfectionist, and maybe to like a detrimental degree. But like I look at something like, does it work? Hell yeah, we're ignoring that problem. I might write myself a note like, hey, this is bad for X, Y, and Z reason, but it doesn't matter right now. But
yeah, I've had to get better at letting go of the perfectionism, because it's good in the sense of that I care about how things are done, but
Agreed.
You need to care about the right things, like caring about how some code system is structured. When the system itself doesn't play well, then no matter how clean that code is, it's just a bad system. So it's finding the right things to care about.
Right. And like it's I think it's so ethereal to motivate yourself to like make a game. Okay, like let's like, oh, I want to make a game, and then ideally I want people to play the game and make money off the game. But like that's such like, those are like, all of those are intangible, you know.
Yes.
Like, if you don't like, I see a lot of people who think at least on the Reddits, you know, especially like our game dev or our indie game dev, who think they could hit it, or they will hit it rich, like making an indie game. Is like, I don't know if that's a good way to think about things, because like you could. It's not very many of us have, you know.
Yeah, I've like, the statistics are definitely not in favor of people making it big enough to make this a full-time thing. So it is like a huge labor of love. You've got to want to do this to even have a chance.
Right? Like I think the thing I like the most is watching people play my game. Especially like I had like, and I brought this up a couple of times, but like when I was at the Stout Game Expo and people would come up to the booth, I'd be like, oh, I'd be helping like 5 people at once, but just like I saw a little kid walk up, grab the iPad, and just go boop, 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 just start doing it. And I was flabbergasted, because the child didn't look any more than like 10 or something. He just picked up the game like it was nothing and just started playing it. And he made it to like level 30 out of like 100 before his parents pried it away from him. Which I thought was hilarious. I wasn't gonna do that. But I was like, whoa. I was like, that's it right there. That's the goal.
Yeah.
How has your work ethic been since you have since game dev is now your full-time job? I've been unemployed a while, but I still kind of put in like part-time effort. I'm expected to help a lot around the house and stuff like that, but that's kind of copium at some level.
Yeah, I basically have been treating this as though Dice Tower is the 40-hour-a-week job, and then I do my best to not go over 40 hours, as much as there's a part of me that feels like, oh, but there's so much that's not getting done and I'm trying to make this my chance. But if you don't take care of yourself, then ultimately that's gonna really harm you down the road, both just in terms of your psyche and your body, but also your just progress and development chances. Because if you're not working right, then you're not going to be efficient in making the game, and those lack of efficiencies pile up. So I've been treating Dice Tower as the 40-hour.
Do you like wake up at like 9 or 10 and work on it, and then have lunch and then work on it some more, or is it a little bit less rigid than that?
I have a fairly rigid schedule, actually. So I tend to wake up at 5 or 6, depends on whether I'm going to the gym, because I'm an early morning gym guy.
I'm a night owl through and through. I like woke up at noon before this.
So I get up to do early in the morning, do that, and then I take a couple of hours. That's normally what would have been my side project time. One of the things that I've allowed myself to do is be a little bit more lax with that, do a little more entertainment and not so much side project focus. But then by 9 o'clock, that's when I'm starting the Dice Tower development stuff. And then I work 9 to 5. I don't really take lunch breaks, so it's just working straight through. And then I'll flex around with that a little bit.
Different.
Well, it's not that I'm built different. I actually had to build myself up in order to do that. I should actually link you the IGA
I meant like not
talk
taking
I gave.
lunches, but that would be cool. I'm giving a
Because I gave a whole talk about like my side project process and the stuff that I learned in order to make all of that work.
Yeah, because like the game I made while I was in school is small, compared to most games you can buy on Steam. Which I suppose you can't buy that one on Steam, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Is there anything else we want to talk about?
Um.
You want to chill yourself here at the last minute then?
Sure. I'll go ahead and do that, I guess. So yeah, Dice Tower. It'll come out when it comes out. That's hopefully sooner rather than later. But it's moving targets. But we'll be at 2D Con with a public demo in a couple of weeks, actually.
Oh, that's cool.
So
where's 2D Con?
That's in the Twin Cities. So
okay.
Look, one of the larger cons in the Midwest for gaming. And then we'll be at GDEX in Ohio a couple of weeks after 2D Con. So that's the public demos that are coming up. And then in the meantime, we'll just continue working on the game. As far as shilling myself, I do have a personal website, joshanthony.info, where I'll occasionally post blogs. That's one of the things that I've been meaning to do since I started doing Dice Tower full time, and I've just not gotten around to it because I've been doing a lot of other different side project things and also just frankly not doing as much side project stuff. But yeah, when I do post about stuff, I'll do it on my blog. And then, yeah, I've got some socials, but honestly, the one I'm most active on is LinkedIn for some reason, which is weird.
Oh no, are you a LinkedIn lunatic? Have you been in that subreddit? I love that subreddit.
I don't know what it is, but for some reason, even though like there's a lot of vapidness on some parts of LinkedIn, if you get the right like group of people, like there's a lot of good stuff there
I'm sure
too.
There is. I just like that subreddit. It's just so like. Do you think people are posting things to make it onto that subreddit? I almost like think it's like Ouroborosing itself.
I've not heard of the subreddit, but yeah, I imagine some people are probably doing things to get on things because that's just human nature.
True. It's that Reddit's all about like it's mostly employers posting like crazy things like, oh, I had an interview with a perfect candidate, but he was chewing gum, so I didn't hire him or something. It'll be like something like that. Like, why does that matter? Like.
Yeah,
what's going on? That's kind of funny, but yeah, I imagine there's tons. I bet I'm on LinkedIn. There's tons of good people on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I guess I'm also on Twitter and Blue Sky. Also, I sometimes post there, but honestly, those are just less my thing.
I know, same. I totally gave up the Twitter. I wasn't getting anything from it really, and I've been posting on Blue Sky a bunch. Well, some really. I've been trying to interact with people, try to build like some sort of like following or whatever. But I've never been one of my friends who's like, let's call him good at Twitter or was before he got off. He always says, "Oh, you don't know how to post on these websites." So take that as you will. Well,
yeah, there are patterns.
I know, right? It's just like, but I'm like, I don't care about that. I'm like not a conformist in that matter. Well, it was really nice talking to you. We haven't talked in a couple of weeks. We played Stellaris together for was that like a month ago or 2 months? Oh god.
That might have been a month ago. It's been a while, yeah. But yeah, this was a great conversation. I enjoyed it.